You're watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. For the full episode, search Football Ramble wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes out Monday to Friday. Right, let's get on with it, shall we?
You do wonder that if actually Conte is coming towards the end of his, effectiveness as a manager. It's very rare that you get top level coaches that stay at the top level for their whole careers. We see it with José Mourinho as well. And I wonder as well.
And they get frustrated.
They do get frustrated, but I'm wondering if these kind of hand grenade managers where they come in and just blow everything up after a little while and then they move on and they do the same thing elsewhere is becoming a little bit anachronistic because it's less effective with Mourinho now. Thomas Tuchel, I suppose, is another example of a manager where you expect this to happen. But, I think a club's just thinking, this isn't worth it. This just isn't worth it.
I think when you look at that sort of football, when essentially, and it's a horrible way to put it, you are selling a product nowadays at elite level in modern football, I think it's increasingly harder to justify, because if you don't have results and if you don't have the best results, you have nothing really. And I think you could say the same for Simeone, who you find hard to imagine in another context apart from Atletico Madrid. You look at Maximiliano Allegri. Well, I think what's the interesting thing when you talk about him maybe being anachronistic, it's growing into being anachronistic in an Italian context as well, because Italian football is not played like that anymore. You look at the way they won the Euros, you look at the way that Mancini has managed the national team, leaning into a more attacking style of football. I don't think that's how a lot of Italian fans look at football and how a lot of Italian clubs look at football anymore.
Could I also be interesting to see what we all think about this? But do you remember maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, there was talk about the life cycle of those kind of, as Jim described, hand grenade managers as 3 years. It's basically now 18 months, isn't it?
At each club.
Yeah, no, sorry.
But at the top
clubs,
level, Jonathan Wilson talked about at the top level, maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
Arguably like a player.
No, but in terms of...
This means in an individual stint at a club, though.
In an individual stint at the club,
absolutely.
And the two people who used that example were Mourinho and Conte, who have now just only amassed 3 years between them at Spurs. And now, do you think that's a product of them thinking that they were too good for Spurs, or are we in, because of what you said about the product, do you think we're in a stage now where everything's that little more concentrated, whether it's because of the kind of coverage that these kind of managers get, or the fact that they can't necessarily dictate to players in the way that they used to? Because it felt more and more now, despite the fact that if you read what's come out over the last 48 hours, even the last week really, it seems that Spurs players were so annoyed with Conte that it was a huge issue. More annoyed than they were, at Mourinho. But they knew his time was going to come to an end, so they didn't need to do anything about it.
But I think it's because there's a ceiling at Spurs as well.
Right.
And they've gone too far away from their identity, really. Because that's why Pochettino was such a great coach for them. Because you look at a lot of the coaches who are on the short list for Spurs, and they're what I guess you might term these days as project managers, the coaches who want to really coach, who want to develop players. Mourinho and Conte are not like that. Neither of them ever should have been Spurs manager. And this is really Levy's ego, thinking, look at us, we got to the Champions League final now, we've got a massive stadium, we can go and get these coaches who wouldn't have spat on Tottenham 5 years ago. And, well, actually, it turns out, even if you should get them, even if you could get them, maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah. I wonder. I don't think Conte's necessarily done with regards to his effectiveness at the top table. I mean, clearly Mourinho, goes down that level and wins Roma that European trophy, and
Roma being down a level is shows you're at the top, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think with Conte, again, I think it's somewhere in between. Because you are talking about Spurs, they've had some good managers and they haven't quite done it. Whereas Conte beforehand, Inter won the league, pretty good at Inter. At Chelsea, you're going back a few years now, won the league and cup before it all kind of exploded. I think Conte's still got something to offer. But I suspect now that apparently he has been reassessing, his work-life balance and all that kind of stuff with his wife and I think his daughter living back in Italy. The deaths of his friends have made him think that. I think we might see Conte back managing in Italy reasonably soon, and I think his effectiveness will come through there. But I think at Spurs, it's difficult. But it will be interesting to see who Spurs go for next.
On Conte, I think he'll take a break, take over at PSG, and not win the Champions League.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.